Started.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order at 4:01. And the first motion is the approval of the agenda. I have a motion moved by Victor and seconded by Elwin that the agenda for the regular council meeting held April the 28th, 2020 be approved as presented. And further, that council agrees to suspend the rules of the procedural bylaw to move delegations presentations up in the agenda order to follow item number 5, mayor's remarks.
Okay, but we have an amendment to the agenda.
Okay, so not as presented, but as amended.
Correct. And I have 2 amendments.
Right. What are those, Kathy?
Okay, they're under number 7, under staff reports. Under I, where I have the report on the regulation. We're going to speak about the Committee of Adjustment meeting. And also another item under 7J, council packages.
Okay.
What number was that under?
7J.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, hearing none. Are there any no's to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Is there any disclosure, pecuniary interest, and general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Hearing none, we'll record that. I have a motion moved by Bill and seconded by Sherry that the minutes of the regular council meeting held April 14th, 2020 be approved as presented. Any discussion on that?
Your Worship, I have one comment I want to make on the Public Works Manager's report on the minutes.
Yes.
There seems to be some confusion with what I said regarding the brusher. I wasn't concerned about the brusher that the old brusher that we're changing. I was talking about the brusher, the Lieber one, the 4-wheel drive self-propelled one. And I got an answer on that, but both the media and the minutes reflect that I was talking about the existing brusher that we're trading in. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Okay.
And I was not.
Okay, so then we will take a look at amending that. Maybe you can talk to Cindy about exactly what was said. And we will pass this motion as amended instead of as presented.
Okay, fair enough.
It's okay with that? Anyone voting no? Motion carried. Again, just the rules. If you vote no, we'll ask for a recorded vote so that we catch everyone's vote. Okay, next we have the mayor's remarks. Remarks are not going to be long, just it's amazing how well our community and businesses have done in this COVID-19 crazy time. We've kept our numbers down, and Dr. Moore is very pleased with how well people are doing what's been asked of them. And with the talk of starting to open things up, certainly KFLNA has been in a good position to take a look at how that can happen, but still it's pretty early. And the province and the feds are just talking about stipulations as to how that will work. But again, kudos to all the volunteers, everybody that's been delivering meals and helping their neighbors. We do live in an amazing community. So thanks to all out there for everything that everyone is doing. Deputy Mayor, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I would like to mention, Your Worship, is I see a few of the summer folks coming back to their cottages and reinforce the fire ban. Maybe put it in the paper and make sure that maybe we want to put it on our website, because I see a lot of those folks trying to light their little campfires, and just around my area here, I don't know whether anyone else has experienced that, but I think maybe we need to put a message out again.
It is on the website, as far as I'm aware, that there is a fire ban province-wide.
Yes.
Again, we'll check that to be sure, and maybe Craig can be sure to add something in the council report about it. People tend to think that campfires should be different than any other fire, but as we know, on the weekend, somebody cooking hot dogs and 6 acres were burned. So it's very dry right now, and we need to pay attention to the ban. Okay, does anyone else have anything to add? Hearing none. Are there any deferred items? Okay, we'll go to the auditor's presentation now. They're standing by video, and I think Cindy will be putting up their presentation in front of us.
Yeah, so just bear with me. I'm just going to stop sharing and pass the baton over to Kara Chesney, so she will get her PowerPoint presentation up.
So we have Kara Chesney and we have Danielle Bureau from MNP LLP.
Hello. Hello. This is Kara. So hopefully everyone can see that. Similar to last year, it's not overly long, but the first thing I'd like to do before we get started is obviously thank council and management. It's been a huge help getting through this process again this year. And you'll be excited to know or not, there really isn't anything exciting in this presentation. We're just so no big surprises coming out of the audit. So in terms of the objectives, so we're just going to discuss the results. We'll do a highlight. We're not going to walk through the financial statements line by line, but if you do have specific questions, please feel free to ask, and that's why I made Danielle come, because she knows the numbers quite well. And we'll discuss any significant matters that you have to be aware of and any matters of interest. The first thing in our presentation is just our auditor's opinion. And you'll see, as it has been in other years, that it is a clean audit opinion. So essentially, we didn't find anything in the financial statements that would be material or misleading, and that people reading those statements can basically rely that those numbers are accurate. Our audit is all done. You know, we were a bit delayed, obviously, when the office had to close, and that's no one's fault. So obviously, we're trying to get out to do a March meeting, but that didn't work. So the only thing that we need is council approval of the financial statements, as well as receipt of the management representation letter. So that's just something that Michael has to sign. No difficulties were encountered during the course of the audit, no changes to our initial plan, which was presented, and no disagreements or just difficulties with management. So those are all things that we have to bring to your attention. And just to highlight that I am bringing to your attention that there's really nothing. No new auditing or accounting standards. So our audit includes a review of all significant accounting and management systems. So we look at, you know, the expenditure cycle, making sure that expenses are properly authorized, that they're in line with budget. We spend time on the property tax cycle, making sure that that's all done in accordance with the rules that are set. And we look at each material year-end balance, key transactions, and any other thing we consider significant. We focus on understanding the controls that are in place. So that's things like making sure things are properly approved, checks are properly signed by who they're supposed to be signed by. And we focus on a couple specific areas. One around revenue, just to make sure that the revenue has, or the, you know, property taxes, you know, gas tax, all that stuff's in the right spot. And then one thing we do test is just to make sure that the tax revenues are appropriate for people who are related to the township. So we kind of look at staff and make sure, you know, they're not getting a deal on their property tax. And we didn't find anything there, but that's just a test we do. I know, so disappointing. So in terms of the audit outcomes, there was a couple adjustments that have been recorded. So they're in the statements that you'll see. There was a couple capital asset classifications, so just putting them in the right bucket of assets, and then a correction around the Frontenac community arena. So everything's been recorded. No significant internal control weaknesses, so the controls that should be there are there. However, there was, I think, one observation, just some things that might be more efficient to do another way. And these are the financial statements. So statement of financial position, fancy word for balance sheet. So it reports the assets and the liabilities of the township at a point in time, so December 31st. And if you look here, you can see the financial assets. So that's the stuff that's cash or easily turned into cash. You see the liabilities, which is all the bills that are on, you know, that are owed at that point in time. And then the net financial assets. So significant increase from last year, over about $2 million increase in net financial assets. So even healthier than you were last year. And then the non-financial assets are all the assets, the tangible stuff, right? So the roads and the lights and all those things that are owned by the municipality. So those are things that would be harder to turn into cash, but overall an increase in the surplus. So some things to highlight: cash position is better. So better than last year because of the surplus that was generated, as well as an increase in grants to cover capital asset additions. Again, as we expect, there's always significant capital asset additions. Sometimes I talk to you about stuff that you probably know more than I do about, but obviously the Crow Lake Road was the biggest one, 1.2 million. There were some large purchases into the fleet, as well as those were offset with some amortization, which is writing off or expensing capital items over their useful life. There was a decrease in deferred revenue. So deferred revenue is money you get that has conditions on it. So you get money from the government who says you must spend it on this. And if you haven't spent it yet, it shows up as a liability until you do. So the 2017-2018 OCIF funding was spent during the year and it had to be spent on infrastructure. So that's decreased. And then there is a new loan receivable after year end. And I believe, Danielle, that's the Crow Lake Road, right? Talk. It's gonna be quiet.
Yes, it is, Kara.
So it's the Crow Lake Road financing that went through after year end. Here's the capital additions over the last 7 years. So you can see here, pretty much on track with where you've been in the last couple of years. So 2.8 million of capital assets added this year. And I highlighted the bigger ones on the previous slide. And the estimated capital asset consumption is 65%. So the assets are about 65% of the way used. So consistent with where they were last year. So things are being replaced pretty frequently, or not pretty frequently, but in an appropriate manner. 2019 capital asset additions, this just shows you the breakdown of where everything was spent. So roads being the biggest one, so Crow Lake Road would be in there. Machinery, equipment, and furniture would be number 2. And then there's some smaller, vehicles, and then machinery, equipment, and furniture. So vehicles are the fleet additions. And then some infrastructure and small improvements at other sites. All right, at the end of the year, there is an accumulated operating surplus. So over the years over this year, there was a surplus of revenues minus expenses. There was a significant investment in tangible capital assets at 32 million, and total reserves are up. So total reserves are the reserves available for specific purposes that council sets aside to use for certain things. So majority of those have increased. It's all good news to the end of 2019. This is the statement of operations, fancy word for income statement, really. So you'll see here actual revenues that came in were about 13.2 million. Total expenses were 10 million. And at the end of close to 11, and at the end of the day, a surplus of 2.5 million. So property tax is up by 7%, which is consistent with what we thought they would be from both a budget perspective and last year. Consistent in government grants, increase consistent with the funding. Actual revenues were lower than budgeted just due to lower government grants. So certain grants would be set aside for specific projects and certain projects weren't started, so the funding wasn't received yet. There's an increase in total expenses, mostly due to wage increases, which is consistent with inflation, some materials, and amortization of assets. So those expenses are consistent with budget. This is the breakdown of where the majority of your expenses go. The transportation being number 1, protection being number 2. Okay, consistent pretty much with the year before. In terms of a summary, just a summary of our findings. So there is an increased level of debt for purchases of capital assets, offset by a receivable for a loan that came in after year end. Increase in the net assets due to tangible asset purchases and net cash position, so all very healthy. And total capital asset additions of 2.8. So keeping in line with the aging equipment, it's being replaced in the appropriate timeline. Things aren't getting so old that they're not going to work anymore. Over half of the annual expenses are related to transportation, with protection and general government being the next 2 items. And no significant accounting policies to note. So I'm happy to go back to any of those slides if anyone has specific questions on any of the line items.
Are there any questions from anyone? Bill?
Yes, Madam Mayor, to the accountants.
when you look at the amount that we're spending on the percentage of our expenditures of being in transportation, I'm wondering how that would compare with other municipalities of the same size of road network. Can you give us an idea as to whether we're above or below, or should we looking at our operations in way of the expenditures in transport?
Yeah. So I would say you're probably a bit higher than some of the other municipalities we see, but this not in a dollar sense. So when I look at this pie chart that you see here, the transportation is high, but if I looked at like a bigger municipality, like if I look at the city of Kingston, they're going to have a lot more services offered. So their breakdown is just going to be a little bit more different, right? So, they're not sharing, for example, any of their costs with any other municipality. So they would have all of their own libraries and so they're just a different breakdown. But in terms of dollar spent for the size of your municipality, I don't think you're out of line. I think it's very reasonable. But in terms of your overall pie, you got a lot of roads that you have to maintain, right? And you might not have other areas that you're spending the money on. So I don't see any problems there. Danielle, I don't know if you have anything, or Michael.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone? Excellent. Okay.
If you don't mind, Madam Mayor, just like to say thank you to the auditors for their hard work in helping me produce the financial statements to the caliber that they are.
Yes. Excellent.
Nobody takes pride in financial statements like the accountants. When you put them all together and they print it on nice new paper, they are very nice. I agree.
I have a motion moved by Tom and seconded by Cindy that council receive for information the presentation from NNP LLP regarding the audit findings report for the year ended December 31st, 2019. Any discussion? Are there any no's to the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, ladies. Good report.
Okay, thanks for having us.
Okay, next on the agenda are staff reports, finance and treasury. I have a motion moved by Bill and seconded by Tom that council approve the check distribution reports totaling $1,206,323.48 as prepared by the treasurer. Any questions or comments? Anyone voting no to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Now we have an apportionment motion moved by Brent and seconded by Nikki that council approve the following apportionment of assessments as recommended by impact for 2020 as applicable for the following roll numbers, and there are many of them there. Any questions or comments on any of those? Hearing none, is there anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Next, moved by Nikki and seconded by Brent, that council approve the vendor of record list as recommended by the treasurer. Comments or discussion?
Once again, Madam Mayor, Bill here, to Michael. When I look at the vendors list, Michael, I see numbered companies on a lot of those lines. Do we have any information in regard to who those numbered companies are, and as to whether or not they're the giving vendors an opportunity to bid more than one time on a particular purchase? Can you give me some insight?
Councillor McDonald, through your worship, there would be different information in the vendor records. I'm not necessarily linked that up. I could go through and do a little search, but I wouldn't think that they would be, but shouldn't put anything past anybody.
Okay, that satisfies me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Your worship, it's Tom here.
Yes.
Michael, a question for you. I may have asked you before, but pardon me if I did. I was wondering, how long do you leave these vendors on the list they haven't used for the last year or 2 years? When do you deactivate them?
So through your worship to Councillor Dewey, 3 years is generally what I've been trying to do. I just recently, in the list that I used to produce this, put a restriction date in, and I've been going back the 3 years.
Thank you, Michael.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, anyone voting no to the motion? Motion's carried. Next, we have a motion moved by Victor and seconded by Brent that council adopt the 2020 budget as presented by the treasurer with the recommendation to raise the municipal levy of $8,896,524. Discussion?
If I may add something, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So just to let council know, when we last met, we were at a 3.5% overall tax rate increase. The county came in lower than expected, so the overall tax rate increase is now 3.1%, or $43 for every 100,000. You will also notice in the bylaw that I'm asking for council to approve to not charge interest on 2020 taxes only for June, July, and August. This is comparable to North Frontenac Township. South Frontenac is not charging interest on all taxes, but this is what I felt was fair to people related to COVID.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, Bill here again. To Michael, through you, that interest deferral only applies to this year's taxes, am I correct? Not to that have been in arrear for years? Could you clarify that for me? Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor McDonald, you are correct. I am proposing in the bylaw to not charge interest on any 2020 taxes owing, because the taxes that were obviously owing before now were there last year, and we have already given an adjustment to people to help out for 2 months. I felt, again, this was fair because the situation is happening this year. People who are behind still need help, and we will certainly work with them on an individual basis. But that's what I'm proposing, is to not charge interest on any 2020 taxes outstanding. And we right now, there's still a few days of payments left to come in, but we are about 10% higher on our property tax arrears than we were last year at this time, which I think is pretty good.
Excellent.
Madam Mayor, question?
Brent?
Michael, I know that we're doing this up to August. Is there a mind to, and again, not knowing what the future holds, is there a possibility that we're going to revisit this in August to see whether or not this measure is sufficient, or we need to look at something a little longer?
Through your worship to Councillor Cameron, nothing's off the table. I feel like this is a long enough period right now, based on everything that we're seeing on an ongoing basis, to allow people to hopefully get back to work and have money coming in again that they can pay their taxes with. We have, and that's the other thing, thank you for asking that, we've pushed the due dates back from the normal June to August and then to October, which it should help people. But again, nothing's off the table. And if we felt that we need to, if any councillor wanted to recommend it, or if myself, Mayor Kathy wanted to do it, we could certainly look at not charging interest the rest of the year. But then again, that hits our pocketbook.
Mm-hmm.
We can always bring it back.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Anyone voting no?
Nikki, no.
Okay. Nikki, no. Okay, so let's go. Sherry, 1. Elwin? Elwin?
Yes.
Sorry, couldn't hear you. Brent?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Victor?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Fran, yes. Motion's carried. Okay, now we have a motion moved by Nikki and seconded by Elwin that council approve the recommendation of the treasurer to accept the 2020 excluded expenses report as required by Ontario Regulation 28409. Any discussion or questions on the motion?
Just a quick overall comment, Madam Mayor, just that this report is trying to, the province wants us to see that if we had to budget for amortization, employment expenses and landfill closures, that we would be budgeting for a deficit of 3.3 million almost.
Yeah, it doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy.
No.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone voting no? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay,
Thank you, Council.
we are at Public Works. Motion moved by Cindy and seconded by Tom. The council approved the recommendation of the Public Works Manager to rescind motion number 121, 2020, passed April 14th, 2020, which was to accept the quote from Cubic's Equipment for a brusher in the amount of $44,087.54, excluding HST. And whereas the Public Works Supervisor has investigated the actual date of delivery, which may be 60 days or later, depending on the situation at the US border. And whereas Colby Equipment, whose quote was the second lowest, has a brusher in stock in Canada and can install and deliver it within 2 weeks of issuance of a purchase order. And the procurement bylaw states that we do not have to accept the lowest quote. Now therefore be it resolved that council rescind motion 121, 2020, passed April 14th, 2020. And further, that council approve the purchase of a brusher from Colvoy Equipment in the amount of $47,110, excluding HST, and authorize the Public Works Manager to obtain a purchase order. Discussion? It's about a $3,000 difference.
Just,
Maybe I'll ask I have a question, but I'll ask if Tyson wants to talk about this first.
Sure. Tyson?
Bill here, Madam Mayor, to Tyson. All of this equipment has the same warranty and flexibility and assets that would meet our needs. Am I correct?
Can everybody hear me? It's Tyson here.
Yeah, we can.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Bill, the warranty is very, very similar to 15 quotes actually.
Okay. Brent, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did actually. And the original call for quotes that we had, we were looking at installation, pickup, and delivery as well as training. And that's the question I have. I mean, it's great that the turnaround time has got to be a lot quicker, but the training component, given the fact that we're in this new reality and we're talking about social distancing and of course the availability, I'm just wondering, even if we get the brusher installed and delivered within that 2-week time frame, what would be the availability training for our staff? Would the vendor be able to get that turned around as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the training is pretty basic. It's very similar to the brushers and mowers our operators are already familiar with. Training is mostly for the mechanic, and we make sure the mechanic, maybe one experienced operator and a foreman are there to relay the message to everybody else. So social distancing is not an issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Bill here again. I would also suggest to Tyson is that these companies actually have videos that they can do training without having any human contact whatsoever, and that may actually be the fact.
Sure. Mayor, I'm not doubting Qubex's ability to be able to provide that as well, but one bonus with this switch is that Coldboy has been throughout this whole pandemic, Polvoy has been sending lots of emails, offering lots of online demonstrations and training and stuff like that. So I'm confident they will be able to accommodate that.
Good. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Just through you, Madam Mayor, I had a quick question for Tyson.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Even though the this tender is a little bit more expensive than the previous tender we accepted, it's still under the budgeted amount that we allowed.
Can't hear.
Is it still under the budgeted amount that we allowed?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it is. We budgeted for 50,000. It seems like with these big pieces of equipment, there's always something that sneaks up. So it's nice that we've got a little bit of reserve left over. It's definitely still under budget. And I just want to remind everybody, there is some features. I won't bore everybody with what features they are, but there's some features on this one. It's not, you're not paying $3,000 for this. It is an upgrade. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
Can't hear Sherry, so hopefully I answered her question.
I think so. Sherry?
You did. Thanks very much, Tyson.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Anyone voting no? Motion carried. We have a motion moved by Sherry and seconded by Bill. Whereas a draft record retention bylaw and records management policy was reviewed by council at the December 10th, 2019 council meeting, and no comments or changes were suggested by members of council. And whereas our record retention bylaw needs to be enacted prior to implementing our new document management system. Now therefore be it resolved that council accept and adopt the records management policy and acknowledgement that the policy will be implemented in stages as staff are introduced to the new system, and that council hereby appoint the clerk as the records manager coordinator, and further that council pass the record retention bylaw later in the meeting. Discussion?
Once again, Madam Mayor, Bill here. I just have a quick question of whoever put it. I have no problem with it, but I'm much wondering if someone actually goes into this program and retrieves info from the system, is there a record kept of who searched the material and when they obtained the information?
Who's going to answer that one?
I'll take a stab at it, Madam Mayor, through you to Councillor McDonald. There are permissions granted in terms of who has access to various folders. So we have a sort of an audit trail that way. We haven't played around with the electronic version of the system as of yet, so I'm not exactly sure how it will all work. But we do have more security features built in terms of who has access to the various folders and who has administrative access to delete and move and that kind of thing. So that's all something that will be fleshed out as we assign the users' passwords and whatnot to the system.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Good question.
And if I may, before there's any other questions, I did want to just let council know that I spoke with Kathy this morning and did make some additions to the policy, and I just wanted to briefly mention what those changes are and why I made them. I was talking with the clerk at the county and David Millard of IT. We did a mock meeting yesterday for Committee of Adjustment, and it was a very useful experience. And one of the conversations that came out of that meeting was, what do we do with the recording of a virtual meeting? Is it considered a record? Is it a transitory record? Does it have to form part and be assigned a retention period and that kind of thing? One issue that was raised by IT was the size of the actual data file that a recording can take and the capability of our servers and whatnot to store it. The other issue was accessibility and other various concerns with respect to if those are to be retained as records. So after speaking with Kathy and based on the information and advice we got just talking around the table yesterday, we have added in the transitory records definition that for greater clarity, the audio or video recording of any virtual meeting shall be deemed transitory following the formal approval of the council or committee's minutes of the said meeting. So in other words, the recording of the meeting will be retained by the township until we know that the written minutes for the meeting have been approved. After that, then we can basically delete that record and it won't be, we won't be forced to retain it in our servers. So, and likewise, I have also added into, I think it's page 11, under storage, that audio and video recordings of any council, committee, or other meeting of employees shall be treated as a transitory record once the official written minutes of said meeting are approved. In the event that an audio or video recording has been posted to the website or social media, the recording shall be removed by the social media moderator as soon as practical following confirmation that the official minutes of the said meeting have been approved. So those are the two additions that I've suggested adding in just to deal with that situation that arose yesterday.
Good that you thought of that, because it is important that those be kept until the recording is done. Any questions or comments? Okay, anybody voting no? Hearing no no's, motion carried. All right, moving right along. Motion moved by Bill and seconded by Sherry. Whereas the entrance for and majority of the parking lot next to Soldiers Memorial Hall is located on property owned by the Anglican Church Diocese, but maintained by the municipality. And whereas the second small parking lot on Garrett Street across from the Robinsons property is used for municipal parking and is located on lands owned by the United Church. And whereas the Public Works Manager wishes to formalize arrangements with each church for the continued use and occupation of these areas for municipal parking as part of the village reconstruction project. Now therefore be it resolved that council authorize the Public Works Manager to enter into discussions with each property owner to secure mutually satisfactory arrangements for these lands. Discussion? Hearing none. Anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Motion moved by Victor and seconded by Tom that council accept the report entitled Ontario Regulation 14920 as prepared by the CAO clerk for information, and that the Committee of Adjustment has its own bylaw which governs the proceedings of the committee. And further that council pass the amended bylaw for the Committee of Adjustment to allow for electronic participation later in the meeting. Discussion? Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Motion moved by.
This is, Madam Mayor, this is the addition to the agenda that I said we'd speak about the Committee of Adjustment and meetings then.
Oh, yes, sure, go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to, I had a discussion with Joe Gallivan this morning, and they did and as Cindy alluded to earlier, is they did a mock Committee of Adjustment meeting, which held a lot, like Megan Reckwall, she set it up. So there was a couple of committee members, there was other folks that were considered public, so we had access to call in. Anyway, they used Zoom, but it's the more expanded Zoom that has a great, technology for allowing participation from the public. And actually, it worked very well. I was in on it for a while before my other meeting. So what they're proposing is the county is purchasing the Zoom, and they're for each month for us to be able to use it for all the Frontenacs and use the Zoom one, because it's not as complex maybe as our WebEx is in regards to participation for the public. One thing that Joe did talk to me about is I know that he knew as well that the next Committee of Adjustment meeting would be on May the 14th under normal circumstances. He is suggesting if council is amicable about having it on May the 21st, because there was a couple little things in that mock committee meeting that they were just trying to finalize. The other thing, I spoke with Crystal and asked her in regards to her applications. She says she has a package ready to go, but she does not have enough applications. I think she might have 2 new ones. If she's going to present 2 new ones to the committee, she has to, that's why we have looking for council's direction for how they want to proceed, is she has to get those notices out tomorrow. She has only 14 days to do that. So she figured that she only have 2 applications, 2 new ones, and possibly of the 7 deferred that have been deferred, she will only have a couple of those because she's waiting on the committee, I guess, from the agencies, comments from the agencies, and now they are starting to come in. So maybe the extra week would provide more time, and she can have all the deferred ones brought forth, which would give you about 7 to 9 applications at that point and get those off those backlogs. So that's what Joe was asking, and I said I would certainly, make mention that to the committee and move forward.
Questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Bill here. As chair, give me a synopsis as to how that would happen. First of all, I really think we should move ahead, especially with the deferred ones, because they've been waiting quite a long time, as long as we can get comments from the health unit, which is under stress right now, of course, and the conservation authorities. But with this protocol, what would it do? Would we meet? Would some of us be in the municipal offices where someone who wanted to appear, would the only way they would appear would be by teleconference, or would they be there in person?
Okay, I can answer that. Yeah, I can answer that. Bill, yourself as chair, and Crystal would appear at the office. The other thing we're suggesting, by having the meeting on May 21st, you'll get that way, gives you that extra week to get all your deferrals done, because you wouldn't have enough of them yet, and there's quite a backlog of them. And the suggestion is to have the meeting at 4, because then Cindy's here as well to help. That she would do something that she's doing now to help to control and actually Zoom is very easy to get into. And no, they would send out a notice to all the participants so that they can call in as well. No, you would not have them come to the office, but like I said, it worked excellent yesterday on this mock. You could hear the participants. They would ask all kinds of questions. They were able to have the screen up exactly like you see right now with the agenda. You would have all the agenda. They had pictures of and all the applications, and certainly sketches. It worked very well. So that's the suggestion, to go with that and do it by Zoom. So yeah, you'd only have a couple of you at here and everybody else to call in, same as you're doing right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't have a problem waiting until the 21st if we're going to have more applications that were deferred so that we can get them completed. Because people need to be doing something, and they could be out cleaning up a lot to get ready to build.
That's correct. And that's why when I specifically went and asked Crystal, so we'd know how many applications she has. And she said she didn't have all comments in for the deferrals. So 1 more week will help. So she can maybe inquire with those agencies to get them here.
Let's push those agencies to get those comments so that we can get to them on the 21st. So everyone's okay with waiting till the 21st? Reluctantly?
Would 4 o'clock work?
I think 4 is a good time.
Yeah, instead of 6.
We would have to notify that
Okay with that?
publicly, though.
Yeah, it would be publicized as well. So, and on our website, everything to say that it's going to be at 4 o'clock.
Okay. I don't hear any no's. So we'll go ahead with that. Okay. And next you have the council packages.
You can say it in a few minutes. Okay, the next, sorry, Mike was asking me a question. So once I'm done this part, he wants to just have it make mention to council. He forgot to say stuff about the surplus. So I said, as soon as I finish with this one, we can go on, okay?
We'll slip him in.
All right. So under staff reports now, the 7J, the administration council packages, with this COVID-19 going on, I just wanted to make mention, and as well, all council received $100 in stipend to be able to print their own packages. We've decided, because I think because of that, and you cannot come into the office, that we're no longer going to print any council packages. We were doing only 2 anyway. So we would suggest that, and with that, you know, it's better if everybody prints their own off so they have an opportunity to review it. And because you'll see it up on the screen at a council meeting, like at one of these meetings as well. So I just wanted to remind everybody that I think it's at this time that we just not print any. And then that way then, and like I said, you have received some money to be able to do your printing as to appropriately what you want to print.
Okay.
Already doing it.
Okay. All right. Now we need to speak to Michael.
Yes, Michael, are you there?
I see him.
I'll have to go and check, find him.
No, he's there. He's muted.
Turn your mic on.
Oh, now I have my microphone off, sorry. Wait for my screens to adjust. It really messes up the 2 screens. So I apologize for interrupting and forgetting to mention to council that for 2019, we have a surplus of $629,000. 500,000 of that is related to the one-time funding that we received at the beginning of 2019 for Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. That is flowing into reserves, obviously, and then is being pulled out for the Shelby Lake Village project. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we will be able to accept credit card payments from property tax owners for receivables and property taxes through Paymentus. There would be a 2.5% fee, but they would accept US credit cards as well. And I think this will be a welcome increase in service to what we were offering through Moneris before.
Do we accept e-transfers?
That is one thing that a couple other municipalities are. I inquired with the bank quickly, and I think it would add more administrative work than it's worth. We have a lot of different options right now for people to pay.
It's just so easy, and it seems everybody's doing that anymore, is e-transfers.
Yeah, but you're already, when I do an e-transfer, maybe I'm missing something, I'm already in my bank account. If you have Central Frontenac set up as a payee, you just simply pay them.
Yeah, true. Okay, any more discussion on that? Okay, we'll move on then. Thanks, Michael. I have a motion moved by Elwin and seconded by Nikki that council receive the April 15th board summary letter from Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority for information. Any discussion? Anyone voting no? Carried. Motion moved by Nikki and seconded by Brent that council receive Quinte Conservation Authority agenda for April 16th, 2020 and minutes February the 20th, 2020 for information. Any discussion?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Nikki, is there actually somebody called Dave Dyes that's actually retiring after 34 years on the Conservation Authority?
Yes, there is.
Found it kind of funny.
Anybody voting no? Motion carried. Okay, a motion moved by Sherry and seconded by Cindy. The council, Cindy Kelsey, that is. I guess the other Cindy doesn't sign motions. The council received for information the following correspondence and it is letters 1 to 8. Any discussion? Anyone vote no? Motion's carried. I kind of like this way of doing it. Motion moved by Tom and seconded by Sherry. The council received correspondence from Sarah McCullough, Youth Program Coordinator for rural Frontenac Community Services for information. And further, that in recognition of the importance of youth in our community and in recognition of the challenges youth face during the COVID-19 pandemic, that the Council for the Township of Central Frontenac declare the month of May as Youth Month. And further, the Council recognizes the important role Frontenac Community Services, rural Frontenac Community Services serves in our community to ensure our youth remain connected to the community, and thanks to all the staff and volunteers who play a role in the vital services provided to the youth in our community. Any discussion?
I have one comment. In Sarah McCullough's email, she just wanted to let council know that the same request is going through to all of the Frontenacs.
Good. Good, good. By the time county council meets, it'll be half through the month.
Right.
Anybody voting no? Motion's carried. Now, will we put something in the newspaper, Kathy?
Yes, we will.
Okay, good. Motion moved by Bill and seconded by Cindy that council received for information the letter received from Jeff Urick, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and further that council supports the ministry initiative and hereby recognizes May 12th as a day of action against litter. The black flies will be at full peak.
That's not litter, madam.
Any discussion? Anyone voting no? Motion's carried. People are already picking up, I've seen on Facebook, a few groups. Family groups, that is. Moved by Victor and seconded by Brent that council received for information the email from Charles Mortimer regarding May 1st being Doctor's Day. And further that council for the Township of Central Frontenac recognize and appreciate the hard work of our entire local family health team during the COVID-19 pandemic. Discussion?
Madam Mayor, it's Victor here.
Yes.
I just have a question about what is this action, Shine a Light for All They Do? We're supposed to do it at 9 p.m. I'm assuming turn on some sort of lights. Is there more information about that, more detail?
Kathy, I think that was all that we received, is it not?
That's correct. That's all we received.
So everyone light a light on May the 1st at 9 o'clock.
But not a Chinese lantern.
No.
No Chinese lanterns.
If it's an actual light.
Don't start any fires.
Don't cook any hot dogs outside. Okay, anyone voting no? Motion's carried.
Maybe Craig can certainly put that in the paper because, I mean, we're not going to have it in time to, because May the 1st is not very far long away before we get it in the paper.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And I have to say that our local medical center is doing a great job by staggering doctors, and they do some visits in cars out in the parking lot, and they've been very careful, and so far it's paid off. Okay, moved by Nikki and seconded by Elwin that bylaw 2020-24, being a bylaw to adopt the estimates for the sums required during the year 2020 for the purpose of the Township of Central Frontenac, and to set the appropriate tax rates, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 28th day of April 2020. Discussion?
Madam Mayor, if I recall correctly, I believe Nikki voted against the budget. You might want to clarify that, and you may not want to move or second this motion.
Well, first of all, you can move or second it and vote against it.
Okay, yeah, I understand that, but
So my question is, anybody voting no to the bylaw?
Nikki.
Okay. So now it becomes a recorded vote. Sherry? Elwin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Victor?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
And Fran, yes. Motion carried. Okay, next we have moved by Sherry and seconded by Tom that bylaw 2020-25 being a bylaw to provide a schedule of retention periods for the records of the Township of Central Frontenac be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 28th day of April 2020. Discussion? Anyone voting no? Motion carried. Moved by Bill and seconded by Brent, that bylaw 2020-26 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 209-314 being a bylaw to establish a procedure for the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Central Frontenac be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 28th day of April 2020. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor, Victor.
Yes.
In section F, 1F, it says a member cannot be physically absent for more than 3 consecutive meetings without the consent of the committee. And I'm just wondering, are there still going to be physical meetings? Because the expression there is physically absent. So will somebody have to be there 1 in 3 meetings? And was this also part of our previous bylaw? The Committee of Adjustment meetings are somewhat poorly attended, and I'm wondering whether or not there have been violations of this 1 in 3 consecutive meetings previously. So it's sort of, there's 2 questions. Are there going to be physical meetings?
Yeah, well, there will be, well, if we get back over the COVID thing, we would.
But I think the question, Victor, is does this apply to physical and virtual meetings? That if you miss 3 without cause, then the committee needs to deal with it.
I would believe it does. I don't think it's not very specific, and that's one thing I would like to is certainly go back over the number 2, you know, because that was 2009, and confirm that with everybody. But no, I've looked at a couple other Committee of Adjustment bylaws that folks have been doing in regards to amending to allow the electronic participation, and they have that in their bylaws as well.
And I guess the other part of Victor's question is, has that always been in our bylaw, and have we basically ignored that or had someone not attend the meetings that we should have dealt with?
Yes, that has been in the bylaw since 2009. And you're right, we probably have not exercised that, you know, and kept a record of that, which we probably should be, because it's the same as when we're talking about 3 meetings, it's basically the same as we do with council. If council misses 3 consecutive months, see, with Committee of Adjustment, it's only once a month. It's the same. You would have to, you know, there could be repercussions of that if you miss that many. So I think what we need to do is to be more cautious of that. And I think Councillor Hayes is correct that, you know, I've understood that some of the, don't get a very good turnout sometimes from these meetings, and maybe committee members should be more cognizant of that idea and maybe attend. And now that they're going to be able to do it electronically during this time, I would suggest that they do that.
Well, and you know, it's a good point, and maybe from this we have a lesson that with each new council, we read these bylaws as they pertain to our committee meetings.
Yes, and I've got it on my whiteboard to go back over that 2009 bylaw, and with the committee can certainly read as well, Crystal, to look to see that everything that is taking place and how we're processing applications is still relevant, or do we need to make amendments to it?
True.
Madam Mayor, Bill here. The difference between the various townships committee of adjustment makeup is that on some of the other townships, they have private citizens who are actually been appointed to the committee of adjustment. Whereas we have our committee of adjustment is actually a committee of the whole. So the rules and regulations around missing, what are we going to do if someone does miss 3 meetings in a row in committee of adjustment? Are we going to remove them as a counselor? Because we, in actual fact, it's a little different situation. It's different if you've been appointed to something rather than being elected. So take that into consideration in thinking. Thank you.
Did you get cut off?
Oh, no, mine's up still. Sorry, Victor and Fran are coming into my office because their computers crashed, so mine is still up. I think, Bill, we need to look at that a little bit closer on that. Is some of the ones, like I said, I will do some more research, but some of the ones that I did look at, it does tend to, because there are some that have all of councils. So I can just double check with them if they have the same rule.
Okay, but it's another point to be considered when we're looking at penalties in regard to missing meetings.
It's Tom here, Your Worship.
We have to do better. I'm in Kathy's office now because I got booked out. So the motion is on the table. Is anyone voting no?
One moment, Madam Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, it's Tom here. Can you hear me?
Any councillor absent for 3 consecutive, rather than physical.
Yeah.
That would allow for both physical presence and electronic.
Yes, we can do that.
Did you hear that, Tom?
I'm sorry, no, I didn't hear what was said there.
Okay. What Victor was asking if we can remove the physical part in the bylaw.
Okay.
So we can.
Yeah.
So that would refer to whether you're present, if if you're physically there or you're not. So this way, if you remove the physical part, then
we only need a quorum of 3. Sorry, we only need a quorum of 3. And sometimes it's really not necessary to have the whole council there. So I think that we have to look at that, and I agree with that, taking out that what Victor's suggesting there.
we can do that.
But remember, this isn't council. This is a committee of adjustment, so it's different.
Yep, that's right. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments to the bylaw? Okay, hearing none. Anyone voting no? Motion's carried.
Should be able to hear you. Okay. I'll have to ask Mel.
Okay, I have a motion. Last motion of the meeting, actually. Is there anything else to come before council?
I have none.
Any notices of motions?
Your Worship,
Any other business?
Your Worship, I just had a quick question. It's regarding the Verona Health Center. Is that opened up again, or is that still closed?
Oh, it's opened again,
It is. Okay. Thank you.
as far as I know.
Yes, it's open.
I think Nikki was saying it is.
Yes, it's
Nikki,
open.
did you say yes?
Yes, it's open.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, there's no closed session?
No.
So if there's nothing else for the good of the corporation, we have a motion to adjourn. Motion moved by Cindy and seconded by Nikki, that bylaw 2020-27 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held April 28th, 2020 be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 28th day of April 2020. I want to get May in there. And further, that this meeting be adjourned until 4 p.m. on May the 12th, 2020 at the municipal office, Charlotte Lake, and via video conference. Discussion? Carried. By the way, I want you to know that this is the only council meeting that Craig Buckey's been able to smoke while he's at the meeting.
I used to do it in Mountain Grove, Your Worship.
Good old days.
The good old days. Is Michael McGovern still around?
I think so.
Yes,
Michael,
he is.
are you still there?
That depends on what he's asking.
Well,
Yes, he is, Craig.
Mike, could you maybe give me a call at 279-2788?
Tell me about the budget.
788.
2788, yeah.
Will do.
I just wanted to check.
Okay, yes, so.
Madam Mayor,
Madam Mayor, come back. Bill will ask a question for you. There's the other motion there too.
not a question. I just wanted to make my personal thank you to all of